It was never meant to be beautiful. It wasn't built for visitors, postcards, or aerial shots from the sky. The Great Wall of China was born from a single force: fear. Standing before these stones, one question becomes unavoidable. What kind of empire decides to stretch a wall across thousands of kilometers? How many lives is a ruler willing to spend to keep an enemy out? Can stone and earth truly stop an invasion? Or does a wall become the visible scar of a much deeper anxiety? We call it the Great Wall of China. But that name barely scratches the surface. It doesn't speak of the hands that shaped each brick, or the bodies that never returned home. It doesn't remember the frozen nights, the sudden attacks, the fires in the distance, or the rulers who feared what lay beyond the horizon. Long before it became a destination, before guided tour and cameras, this wall marked the edge of a world. On one side were farms, towns, roads, and slow, predictable lives. On the other, open land, endless grasslands. Horsemen who moved like storms, appearing without warning, then vanishing again, leaving smoke, ash, and fear behind. For centuries, northern China faced the same nightmare. Sudden raids, villages reduced to embers, harvests stolen. Dynasties collapsed and rose again, emperors came and went. But the terror remained, the knowledge that at any moment, a wave of horses and spears could rise from the horizon. At first, there was no single wall. There were many short, fragile barriers. Packed earth embankments, wooden palisades, lonely forts. Built quickly, abandoned just as quickly. Each ruler added a fragment, convinced his section would be enough. None of them were right. Then fear became something larger. It became a plan. A ruler rose to power with an obsession: unity. One law, one system, one empire. Weights, measures, roads, and borders. History would remember him as the first emperor of China. When he looked north, he saw weakness. Gaps, broken defenses, a frontier full of holes. And he decided those gaps would be erased. From that moment, the wall stopped being a scattered collection of defenses and began to change into something else. A single, living structure. A line meant to cut across mountains, deserts, rivers, and valleys. No longer many walls, but one body of stone, earth, and towers. A massive serpent stretching across the land. But to be born, it demanded a terrible price. Workers arrived at mountain ridges where nothing existed. No roads, no shelter, no villages. Only bare rock, brutal winters, and burning summers. The command was simple and absolute. A wall will rise here. Soldiers will march along it. Signals will travel across it. And history will be forced to remember it. Here, where today there is nothing, lives had to be risked to fill the void. Men pulled from the countryside, farmers who had never left their villages, prisoners, soldiers, artisans, were pushed north like a human river. No one knew if they would return. Many did not. For the rulers, the wall was never just a wall. It was a message, carved across mountains and valleys. China's border cannot be breached. The empire can bend, but it will not break. What none could foresee was that centuries later, millions would walk these stones with ease, taking photos, recording videos, unaware that beneath every step lay a name never written anywhere. This is where our story begins, not with the perfect postcard of the wall at sunset, but with one question. How much does the safety of an empire cost, in lives, in fear? The construction sites rose atop mountain crests, in places where there was nothing but rock and steep slopes. No machines, no cranes, no roads. Stones were hauled by hand, lifted into baskets on weary shoulders. Men passed the weight from one to the next, like a living chain. Those who fell were injured, rose, and worked again. Stopping was not an option. It meant being replaced and forgotten. By day, the mountains rang with the ceaseless noise of labor. Hammers striking stone, shouted orders, heavy footsteps dragging materials uphill. By night, silence descended, broken only by the crackle of small fires. Some men thought of families left behind in southern villages. Others kept their eyes on the north, where horsemen from the steppes might appear without warning. The workforce came from every corner. Farmers conscripted by decree, condemned prisoners, soldiers, artisans. Officially, they built the wall to protect the empire, but there was more to it. A wall this vast does not only keep enemies out, it controls those within. It regulates movement, trade, and passage. It is a permanent reminder of the throne's power. If the emperor can bend mountains, he can bend the will of those who live among them. Yet the greater the wall grows, the more fragile it becomes. No wall, however high or long, is taller than the fear of those who built it. Northern incursions did not vanish because of stone. Raiders found gaps, bribed commanders, crossed frozen rivers in winter. The wall slowed them, it hindered them, it complicated their lives, but it could not stop them entirely. Watchtowers rose at regular intervals along the wall, each a small, isolated garrison. Soldiers spent months, even years, far from home. They slept on hard planks, ate plain rice, endured cold and solitude. Their job was observation of the sky, to see whether weather aided or blocked an attack, of the plains, to spot the first plume of dust from distant horses, of signal fires, to read messages from other towers. The wall was more than stone, it was a communication network. Braziers and flammable materials were placed at key points. 1 fire meant a sighting, 2 signaled greater danger, 3 warned of a serious threat. In minutes, the message could travel tens or hundreds of kilometers. News of attack could arrive faster than any horse. A line of fire in the darkness connected mountains and valleys, allowing the empire to act before the enemy reached the cities. Centuries passed, dynasties rose and fell. Some sections of the wall crumbled from neglect. Others were rebuilt, reinforced, expanded. Each era added its layer, new towers, stronger materials, extended routes along the ridges. And sometimes, history delivered an ironic twist. China was at times ruled by dynasties descended from the very steppe peoples. The wall had been built to repel. The wall meant to keep them out, became a structure maintained by their descendants. Over time, as new dynasties rose to assert their power, the Great Wall was reimagined. It was no longer just tamped earth or rough stone. Burnt bricks replaced crude blocks. Drainage systems were built to carry away rain. Internal staircases allowed soldiers to move quickly. Emplacements were added for firearms and cannons. In some stretches, the wall became a true fortified corridor, following the mountains' curves as if it had grown from the land itself. From above, it rises and falls, bends and reappears through hills and mist. At its feet lie fields, villages, and markets. Beyond them, to the north, stretches the endless horizon of the steppes. For the people living near it, the wall was both protection and toil, a barrier and a mystery. It marked the boundary of a world they imagined differently, inhabited by peoples considered dangerous, yet also essential for trade and commerce. Over centuries, a belief grew that still lingers today. The wall was built on the bones of those who labored on it. While this isn't true in every section, it captures the perception of the Chinese people. They understood its human cost. For many, the wall was made not only of stone but of lives. Today, most who walk it forget this. Yet each block tells a story of effort, orders, fear, sacrifice, politics, and shattered personal destinies. For centuries, the Great Wall was above all a frontier of work and war. Then the world began to see it as a symbol. Explorers, travelers, photographers, films, and documentaries transformed it into legend. With the legend came a famous claim. that the Great Wall is the only human-made structure visible from space. It sounds impressive, but it isn't true. From orbit without instruments, the wall is thin, blending with mountains, roads, rivers, and fields. It is not a glowing line cutting across Asia. It is a scar in the landscape, subtle, yet undeniably striking. Its real strength is not in space. Its strength is on the ground. Today, some sections are crowded with tourists, guides waving flags, school groups, couples snapping photos, people climbing the steep steps to say, "I was here too." Elsewhere, far from restored paths, the wall nearly disappears. Fallen stones, half-collapsed towers, grass reclaiming the land. For those who built it, it was hard labor, strict orders, cold winters, and the fear of the horsemen beyond the horizon. For us today, it raises a simple question. How did they build all of this? The Great Wall didn't stop all wars. It didn't prevent every invasion. But it survived the kings who commanded it, the armies who marched along it, and the peoples who should have feared it. If you ever see it in person, do something simple. Stop, look up, pause your phone. That wall winding through the hills is the sum of ambition, fear, sacrifice, and work of millions whose names we will never know. If this story has changed the way you see the Great Wall, stay with me on this journey. On the Uklasa channel, every place has a story. Subscribe and let's explore the next one together.